Okay, I'm gonna warn you, this video isn't going to be exactly happy. And if you get freaked out about death, or if you're watching this before you go to bed and don't want to be consumed by negative thoughts, please watch at your own risk, or preferably not at all. Death is weird. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I get it, but I can't fully process it a lot of the time, more like 100% of the time. And I'm thinking about it because Cory Monteith died, Finn from Glee, and I didn't know him, but I knew he existed. And every now and then it's just like I remember that he died. It's kind of like, oh, Michael Jackson doesn't exist anymore. Oh, Heath Ledger is not in this world anymore. And yeah, I didn't know any of these people, but I knew a little about them. And the more that you at least feel to some degree that you knew someone, the weirder it feels when they're just gone. I mean, if you hear about someone who's died in your town or you're reading the obituary section, it's sad, but a lot of the time you still have no idea who these people were. But if you watch an Australian story, for example, it hits so much harder. You learn about them, you learn how they live their everyday life, what people thought about them, and who they seemed to be. I used to watch Glee. I've watched interviews of him, and yeah, because he's a celebrity, it doesn't make his death any more tragic. It just increases the scope, and it certainly doesn't make it any less tragic. If you've ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my favourite episode is called The Body, and someone really important to Buffy dies, and it's just about the characters dealing with it in their different ways. I personally react kind of like Anya. She used to be an immortal demon, and she just really doesn't get it when this person dies. She reacts kind of like a child. She doesn't know what to do. She keeps asking people questions that seem offensive, but they're genuine, and she doesn't know how to deal. She doesn't know what to do with her feelings. And to quote her, I mean, I knew them. Now there's just a body, and I don't understand why they can't just get back in it and not be dead anymore. And it's stupid. It's mortal and stupid. And Zen is crying and not talking, and I was having fruit punch. And I thought, they'll never have any more fruit punch, ever. They'll never have eggs, or yawn, or brush their hair, not ever. And no one will explain to me why. I identify with that because I don't get it. I mean, how can someone be there, right there, and just moments later be completely ripped from the world? How can it be that easy for someone to leave? I remember when I first realized my own mortality. I mean, I knew that people died, but it wasn't real to me. I couldn't process it. It was when I was 7. The school librarian was reading us The Little Match Girl, and I went to bed that night and I couldn't stop thinking about it. She was so little, like me, and she died. Anyone could die. I could die. And I realized that dying was kind of like falling asleep, but forever. And the idea of never waking up continues to terrify me. And I had always thought that I would go to heaven, but I was contemplating in that moment, maybe no, maybe this is all there is. And someday, that day will be today. A day that feels as present and alive as any other. And when you're a little kid, it's like that feels so far away. It's like you're immortal. And having that blissful facade shattered sucked. I just freaked. I was like, I'm gonna die. My parents are gonna die. My brothers are gonna die. My dog is going to die. Everybody is going to die. And it was like everyone was, all at once. I wish that my library teacher never read me that story, although it probably would have occurred to me sooner or later. But confronting the reality of my own death at 7 was a bit much. I remember going to sleep every night for a while, overcome with a feeling of dread and impending doom. And this still happens every now and then. I remember I'm going to die and it ruins my day. And when people die, it's just like they were a person. They participated in everyday mundane activities, and they thought things, and they had lives, and now it's just stopped. And everyone that they ever cared about in the place in those people's lives is just empty. And it's so frustrating and confusing because, as I said, how can they just not be there? They just were. It feels like you should be able to call them and just say, hey, come back. No, we're not done here. But they'll never pick up. They are just so completely out of reach that it feels impossible. Like, how could anyone be that far away? I just don't believe it. And that's where my feelings get stuck. I just can't fathom. Annika, my friend, just considers it a part of life because it was fine before she existed. Why wouldn't it be afterwards? But I don't want to stop. I don't want to know how that feels. Probably feels like nothing. But I don't want to die in my sleep either. I want to feel what it's like slipping out of my own body. Is slipping even the right verb? But at the same time, that's terrifying. Like some people say you become energy and you're like floating around but with no consciousness, and that doesn't seem so bad to some people. But my everything is my consciousness. I think a lot. I think all the time. I think probably too much, and without it, what's the point? And the idea of heaven sounds really boring. No offense if you hold a different opinion. I completely respect your right to having a different belief than I do. But how I imagine it, it's like this big, long church session. And no thank you. The idea of being a ghost isn't that bad. It might be kind of lonely, especially if you can't touch anything or anyone. I never want that taken away. There's just so many ideas of what happens after you die. And I don't know what does, but I fear the worst. I used to blatantly believe my nana who's Christian, but you grow up and you realize that the people around you aren't just adults, they're people. And a lot of the time, they have very different opinions than yours. You can't just blindly trust or agree with them because you love them. And yeah, so in conclusion, I have no conclusion. Death always makes me feel a mixture of panic, confusion, sadness, and frustration. R.I.P. Cory Monteith, who seemed like a nice person, and anyone who happened to pass away recently or ever. Trayvon Martin, for example. I can't believe George Zimmerman didn't even get manslaughter. How must he feel? I hope it haunts him. Yesterday was a shitty day. But I'll quit being depressing, and you have a wonderful day. I love your insides, and I'm so glad that the blood is still flowing through them. Bye!